say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right, Courtney, go ahead and read his bio.
We would like to welcome Ben Williamson of Flintstone, Maryland, to our ring. He's our judge today. He is an assistant teaching professor and livestock judging team coach for Penn State University. Williamson was raised on a diversified farming operation in Ohio comprised of grain, cattle, and hogs. He teaches production courses and serves as an advisor for the Block and Bridle and Collegiate Cattle Ambassadors Clubs. Additionally, he serves in several roles for Penn State Extension, including providing leadership for the PA Performance Bull Test, the PA Premier Bred Heifer Program, PA Farm Show and Youth Livestock Programs. Williamson has judged various species shows across the United States, from local, state, and regional levels. With his family, Williamson manages a cow-calf operation and are venturing into marketing local produce. Thank you for being here today, Ben Williamson.
Okay, while we're waiting for our hogs to come up the alley, well, we got a presentation for the best display out there, and that goes to the Oinkers. So the leader of the Oinkers, if you could find one of us down here, we got a prize for you. And congratulations on doing that. That was an awesome display. Thank you.
We will be starting with Class 1 today, weights 240 to 245. Our exhibitors are Kimberly Jensen, Gideon Nelson, Jack C. Mattinson, Maylee Christensen, Remington Jensen, Bailey Johnson, Addison Morgan, Levi Furtig, Ellie Thurgood, Mabel Gardner, Jace Lemons, Cooper Ortiz, Tristan Watkins, and Mariana Kimber.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Hog Show, and I appreciate the invitation to be back. I'd be remiss to say as we start our classes, and this is kind of typical, especially in a Hog Show, that maybe I'm having trouble piecing together what exactly I'm trying to find. As we go through here, I think we're alluded with 4 different kinds and how this kind of works together, and all of them have a different piece that I really want to accentuate, but they don't really pull together what I'm trying to really assemble. With that said, I do think there's probably one out here that probably hits me the most consistently in trying to mirror some of those things, and this one's by no means perfect, and that's going to be young lady's hog right here in the middle with us off belt. Now, I'm going to start with the negative, which I tell the kids all to do. I want that one to operate better in terms of how it handles its rear hip. I want that one to be opened up more in its pin, but that one's a fresh shaped one that sits out big out of its blade. It's got some natural squareness and elevation as it goes, and it resembles some squareness coming and going. I just wanted to hinge looser out of its hock. Then I'm left with 3 hogs that are really trouble me in terms of where I want to go per se, just because I've got different balance points of where I want to be. The one that probably mirrors your class winner the most is going to be young man's belted hog over here in that gilt. I like that one in regards to just general build. That's the one I like the best in terms of skeleton. That one's got some squareness and where it fits together and still got muscle. I want to make that very clear. Is that the fresh hided one? No. Is that the one that's most raw in terms of shape? Absolutely not. But that one still squares with muscle and how it feeds out of its blade. After that, we're going to go to this hog right here. Now, someone from the outside is probably going to say this is a popular choice, and I'm not opposed to that conversation. That one's enormous in terms of his blade. He's good in terms of his body, and you've done a great job presenting one. He's just a little small and chubby everywhere. I want to pick him up on his front feet. I want to loosen him up and make him more square within himself. He's teetering on the outside as he goes, and then we've got the muscle hog. That one's enormous in terms of its back, enormous in terms of how it fits into his forearm and its stifle. He's too much. He's woven out at his hock. He's not just kind of pushing and paddling all the way through. But as I sit there and then go through and I've got some better built bogs behind it, I think they're the ones that probably just kind of fit together in terms of where we're trying to find on the upper end. We'll talk the next couple as we go through, and here's another belted bear that kind of troubled me and where he goes, because honestly, you get this from the side from a production aspect to one that's comfortable, sound, loose, and it has some natural squareness. I actually like this hog a great deal, but when you sit back and really study him, even though I like his length of side, I like he handles his hip and hind leg, man, he's just kind of marginal in terms of actual muscle. He's starting to get just a little shelfy. He closes at his knee. He's not as wide and big in his pin, but I think that's a really useful, practical kind of a hog. Young lady, we've got a snickerdoodle, if I remember correctly, coming out next. A really raw, lean hog. When you get on top of it, it has a great deal of expression. That one's too straight in its blade. Doesn't go in near as naturally and comfortably off either end of its skeleton. And then we'll talk in here in just the next couple. Another young man has got a really productive hog that I like in terms of sound. I love that one in terms of length. He's got some added bone. Man, that one's starting to get shelfy and just needs to be yanked open in terms of power. Then a young lady's belted gilt kind of falls into that same pattern. Just starts getting a little more upright in terms of her blade and comfort, and maybe paddles a little more. That one goes away. A little lean, but that one needs to go. As we go through the rest of the class, we've got muscle. We've got in spots in the next few, they need to be laid back in their blade, maybe more comfortable, cleaner jointed. Then we've got some productive hogs that just need to be opened up in terms of general width and power.
Let's get growing. Your partner for grain and feed, merchandising, marketing, storage, and logistics.
Nice top four. So we get into to our second class. We're going to go ahead and start this young man right here. This is a hog that balances and proportions the best in regards to how it all comes together, not only from the side. Proportionality is on just from how the head and neck, blade angle, and length all fits together, but also in terms of bulk and power. That's the one that's naturally square-chested, bolt-bodied, and big pin and ties down low. That one's got a really fresh shape and still got a head carriage that fits. I like that one in terms of just general build and squareness from behind. Now, with that being said, we're going to young man's belted gilt here for 2. There's things I actually like about this hog better. I actually like a little bit longer sided ones if I can find them and they fit. I like the elevation of that one's shoulder. That one is really jack fronted with added extended from his blade forward. A little stouter featured and still has some squareness of chest. The problem is with that hog is I just don't think of proportions in this particular category. When you get right in on top of him, even though he's fresh shaped, big pinned, that one isn't as good in terms of its forerib and center body and expand. That one's probably needs to be at a little heavier weight to be able to fill out and go, but that's okay. Hog comes next. I think it's just a very practical, good body to what blue-eyed gilt down here on the end. That one's really put together really nice in terms of being really square from its blade back, and everything fits with some silhouette and proportion. That one's got true squareness coming and going. Problem is that one isn't as opened up, a little more round in terms of its joint and bone work. Not quite as fluid as we go, but man, that's a productive, big-bodied, growthy hog. We're going to come out with the white hog that's next. That one's rawer, leaner. I got no argument in that from just a sheer cutout and cutability standpoint. The problem is it comes at kind of a consequence. That one doesn't sit as good in terms of its body. That one's not as fluid in terms of its joints and gets a little more inflammation. Rolls up in this blade just a little bit more. I'm going to mention the young man's Berkshire Barrier coming out next. There's things I really want to like about this hog. Quite honestly, probably of the top 6, 7, this is the one that's just the chubbiest and needs more lean tissue. And if it has that, we probably have a conversation to float it at least into the top 3. The problem is that one, when you read in his lower third, starts getting too full in his elbow pocket, too full down low and in the seam of his ham. He just needs to be squarer and fresher in terms of natural lean shape underneath. Where I really want to compliment him is, honestly, he's the most resembled of your top 2 in terms of balance, skeleton, comfort. He's really an elevated one, but he's also too frail in terms of his jawline, too narrow. We've taken that to a little bit to a fault, but that's a very nice, youthful, highly presented Berkshire Barra. As we work down the line, give him a hand. We have a long spine one that's got some muscle and power that needs to be cleaner in terms of joint. Here's a muscle hog with the blue hog with a scar that's got power, it's got body, too coarse jointed and doesn't handle its rear leg quite as nice. And then we start getting hogs that are too jammed up, maybe not quite as bold body, square enough, and just generally assembled in terms of balanced skeleton. Give them a big hand as they head back to the barn.
Rudd Funeral Home is there to serve your family in your time of need.
Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free.
Rock and Roll Construction Products, providing U-Cart concrete and landscaping products. For a genuinely warm welcome with small town friendly service, stop by the grill. They have slowly smoked ribs, wings, and briskets, along with homemade appetizers, unique sandwiches, pizzas, and burgers. The grill is a perfect location for family get-togethers or business lunches. They can even cater. For added fun, call the Bear River Bowling Center and reserve a lane. No matter what you like, the grill has something for everyone.
Nice top end. We're going to go ahead and elect to start the calico gilt, or bear that's running right at me. Gilt, I guess, is where we're at. I'm on the wrong end. I think this one just kind of fits the pieces together the best in my mind. That's, again, a big square, fresh-shaped one that's the widest gauge, widest constructed. Squares coming and going. Still fits okay in terms of its forerib and body. Now, I'd be remiss to say that I'm just not in love with this one's skeleton. This one gets a little shorter and steeper off both ends. Doesn't necessarily have the same range and athleticism. That's going to be in the hog that comes in second. Right here, young lady, you're going to be 2. I'm going to be honest with you. When I get this one from the side, I watch this one and how it hinges out of its rear leg, the added length of hip, how that one handles and the shape to its knee and blade. I want to tie into this one very, very badly. The problem is when I get him right behind him or on top of that gilt, that one is just kind of average in terms of width and power, and I start wrestling with myself. Do I want to do that because that's what I admire? Yes. Can I do that in terms of which one I think puts the most pieces together? Probably not. But that one from the side, young lady, has a great look. I love the flexibility of that one's side, her spine, and how it fits out of its rear leg. And that one's so naturally able to put its head up and just carry it high out of the top side of its blade. There's a lot of quality in that hog, and I want to make sure that that's realized. Hog is going to come third is going to be the cheetah gilt. And we start kind of getting into hogs that maybe aren't quite as cosmetically neat and unique. But when we start looking and breaking this one down, this is the one that comes to me in terms of just being the next most practical in terms of trying to get production quality, functional skeleton, or real shape. That one's fresh in terms of its topside shape. It's compositionally correct when you read it down low. Some squareness and cleanness of joints. It's a very logical third. The flat-belted hog that stands in the 4-hole. When you get right on top of this one, even though it's just a little fuller in the lower third of the skeleton, I'm not so sure this one isn't just a little bigger top when we read how it feeds out of the backside. There's a little Duroc influence in that one, and they got just a shot different muscle shape that isn't as upstanding. But the problem is, as I step off that one, as much as I love his forerib, he is starting to get just a little chubby down low. He's frailer structured. He's just a little steeper and not as fluid in how he hinges off either end. He stands fourth. Fresher shaped one that's more compositionally clean and trim up top with a great, more conventional shape coming out of the top side of its skeleton. That hog gets a little plain in terms of its natural width and bulk. That one wants to swivel too much off the top side of its skeleton on either side. So we work down the lineup. We got some lean hogs with a fuzzy one that maybe just needs opened up and hinge looser. We've got one that hinges okay but needs to be bulked up, gets too short out of its hip. And quite a little quality, just natural width and power kind of turns in the conversation as we work down the lineup.
Tanglewood Studios has something for everyone, whether it's dance, cheer, color guard, or gymnastics. There's even recreational all-boys gymnastics along with Mamma Mia classes. Family rates are available, so come join the fun.
Lincoln Financial specializes in estate, investment, and retirement planning, as well as business benefits. At Lincoln, they are totally impartial, comb through different options to create financial products that a person needs. Lincoln Financial, big city service, small town care.
Brazen Cook and Avery Hyder.
I think the top side of this kind of pieces together pretty logical for me. And as we go through, I think there's one that's just kind of an outlier that still fits, and that's the young lady's belted or blue belted bear right here in the middle. When there's freak pieces that come together, that's kind of something you got to admire. And I'm going to be honest, I'd be if we find one that big hip, that big stifled, that big legged today, it would surprise me. I'm just going to be quite frank. And usually that comes to me just too out there. Now, I'm not going to say this is the freshest one. I think he maybe kind of has some things that I'd like to maybe just tone back just a shot on him. But to be able to do that and stay that square, still stay that level, and be able to utilize his rear leg, I think is very, very impressive. After that, the second high-quality hog in here is going to be the young lady's belted bear right here in the middle. In terms of his just shape, I think he's just a shot more fresh and natural when he comes out of the backside of his blade. That guy coming at me, I think, reads really square and true. The problem is his two sides. It kind of gets him out horsed outside of the fact that that one is outlier in terms of muscle. From behind, that one's just kind of average in terms of natural pin width and shape. I want to go ahead and add more turn. But in the side, that hog gets a little shuffy and short in terms of how he sets in at his blade and neck. I want to go ahead and extend him out and just give him a little more presence from the side. There's some things I like about this hog quite a bit. There's things I think is more natural than the one that's right in front of him. That one is actually really fresh in terms of his center body. He's really good in terms of being big out of his bold rib cage at his forerib. I think he's fresh in his blade shape. I love that hog from a production standpoint, just in his center third. Coming at me, he's got me with. He's not the clean-jawed one. I love his jaw width and skull shape. I think that's very imperative in terms of making him burly and wide constructed. Two things. He's maybe not quite as good in terms of the seat of his pants in terms of his shape. I think he's ambulatory sound. He needs to be longer hipped and use his rear leg with more athleticism and squareness as he goes away. You fix those couple things, that bear gets in a conversation. Belted gilt has come in the next spot. It, to me, is the next best balance. This one's got a softer, deeper side, not as big-footed, not as neat in terms of just general density. I think this is a quality hog that these blue hogs are a little elusive to read. When you get right on top of them, that one's got more shape and spread and just density and power coming down its top. That one's actually bolder in its upper rib than what we expect. We just want to go ahead and make that one stretch and reach with more athleticism. We want to make that one stouter at the ground and just got out-horsed by some really, really burly ones. Next blue hog I actually like quite a bit in terms of center body. That one's not as fresh in terms of its shape. That one swivels more as it goes away. It needs to be in its knee and squared up. I want to give that one just a little more just natural width and squareness and fresher peel. And as we work down the lineup, we kind of turn into conversations of hogs that are lean, that just need just a little more reach and athleticism. That one breaks behind its shoulder. That one needs to be opened up underneath. This one ends up being bolder in terms of his rib cage relative to the one right in front of him with more turn. He's got a big top. That one gets too bow-legged and needs opened up and plied open. And then we got into a red hog that honestly sits there in that old Rusty here, has a good quality look that's very functional. He's actually fresh and safe. Compositionally, I think that hog's really good. Just needs to be stouter, wider, more powerful. That one gets pretty plain and average from behind. As we work down the lineup, we end up having issues in terms of skeletal quality, too bow-legged, maybe one that's got, and I want to go ahead and on this spotted up bear, that one's really good up high, big-bladed, really bold-bodied. That one swivels and doesn't have near enough just natural power underneath. Needs to be freshened up in terms of composition. Give them a hand as they retire back to their pins, and I think we have a division.
Whether you are buying or selling, you need to know you have someone in your corner who can help you get through that process. The realtors at Coldwell Banker are there to help you get into your home, whether it's a starter or your forever. Let Trudy Hatch and Shannon Johnson help you get into the home of your dreams. They're your local experts for all your mortgage needs. Give them a call today.
Rigby Chiropractic, promoting health and wellness locally with a personal touch.
There's a lot to know when it comes to buying insurance. That's why it's important to have an independent agent looking out for you and your family. Whatever you're looking to protect, Advanced Insurance Services can help. Let Sherry Pally help make sure you have the right coverage and are getting all the discounts you deserve. She can shop several carriers to find the company that is right for you. Call for a free insurance review today.
Give your Division I exhibitors a round of applause. I think there's 4 nice ones out here that has some variation, and I'm going to talk them over here from lightest to heaviest in a moment. When we start talking about the Division I, we struggle to maybe find exactly what we're after, and I think we found the most complete one. You get that one out here, too, in resemblance to everybody else. Not only is that one got masked, that one needs to be a little more relaxed in terms of the angle of its shoulders, a little more timid, and her steps a little more timid and uncomfortable out of its rear leg. Nice hog, just ran into some that are a little more interesting creatures. As we step into the next class, which would be the young man's barra here, or gilt. I like this one a lot, and it resembles of a couple different ways. I think this one actually sits with a youthful look in him that's still square. This one coming at me, I actually like a great deal in terms of the base of his chest and how his knee comes up. I like that gilt wide in terms of how she sits down over her front toe and she utilizes her rear leg with some fluidity. As we get back and look at her, there's 2 things that kind of work against her, and maybe she's proportional, but maybe that hog doesn't step just as true and square from behind. That one doesn't necessarily have the same range of motion and drive and flex from behind. With that said, I think everything fits. I just want to go ahead and set that up, but I love the youthful, fresh look in that one. Next hog out of the next calico, we talked about this one in class being extremely dense and muscular. When you get on top side, that one's raw and powerful, and I love just the sheer mass and cutout value that one sits up high. As we back off of it, we made a comment in class 2. That one's just a little marginal in terms of being steep and round off both ends. I like to go ahead and just give that one some more angulation, and that would make that one just a shot more athletic. The bear out of last class is unique from behind, and that one is Nicki Minaj from behind in a pig form in a male. I don't know what else to say on that. That one's huge, huge in terms of its upper pin. That one's square coming and going, and honestly, that one's added length of hip, and its levelness kind of gives it an appeal, but its length of hip actually gives it the most athletic set. I want to go ahead and make one critique. I think that one looks just a shot mature, and I want to go ahead and freshen him up and make him more appropriate in terms of where I think his age should look. But with that being said, that's the best one. You're going to be champion Division I. talked about the hog behind it being really nice in some pieces, good in terms of the forward, really good in chest coming at me. That's probably my favorite view of that Barra as we get out and analyze him. From behind, he just needs a shot more shape. He just gets a little shuffy and forward. Second highest quality one's going to Class 2. Congratulations, young man, to Reserve Division.
Division 1 Grand Champion McCall Cook. Division 1 Reserve Tyler Eddington.
Roach Ranches supports the people that support them and the fantastic youth of the Valley. Thank you for over 60 years in business, quality seed stocking, gravel, and hunting.
As time goes on, things are becoming just a little more clear, and we're starting to get to hogs that maybe just fit in terms of maturity pattern a little better. I think this one wins, and I think it wins for fun. That one's got an extra long tail length in it and sits at the base of its tail with a cosmetic appeal. Good shape in terms of its blade. Now, there's some other hogs we've seen that maybe are just a little stronger in terms of their front feet, sure, but that one's really, really fresh and good, and you should read that one up to the top side of the skeleton. Stays true and square as it goes away. Have we seen bigger athletes? Yes, but I think that one fits together really, really well, really square, and that one's got probably a little more ideal shape in terms of his head to me, in terms of being stout but burly and how he fits, and still a fresh, youthful package. Nice hog to begin. The other one that's going to stand second is going to be Young Lady's kind of fuzzy gilt over here. I think this one's just a little different in terms of how it's designed. That's a more modest statured one that gets just a little gutty in terms of how it's filled right now. Almost has a broody look per se. But with that being said, you step off of it, I think this is the one that fits the best pieces together. That's the next squarest chest one that's the biggest in terms of its forerib. Feeds big and square out of its blade and fits big in terms of its tail set and pin as it goes away. As you step back and study this one too, relative to the two counterparts to the left, not only the combination of square and true meat animal shape, but that one actually probably has the greatest range of motion in its rear leg. Young Lady's belted hog over here is going to stand third, and honestly, I actually like this one probably in terms of its general stature and elevation just a little more. That one's really just useful and good livestock, nice hogs, being fresh shaped, has some natural width, some natural bone. Looks like that hog has grow and youth in it. I love that factor in it quite a bit. I just don't know if it's quite got the same amount of pieces that it start putting together. I countered back and forth quite a bit between those two because there's things I like about the maturity pattern. I just don't know if that hog actually has the same cosmetic rear leg. I don't know if that hog quite is as good in terms of its general feature from the side, but I think that's just a really practical one. Young Lady, she's being an absolute bear. With that said, there's things that I've really sit there and countered on, and I had to go look and find. In terms of shape, I think that's the next best one relative to the class winner in terms of just being upstanding and dimensional up high. That one's got a huge stifle. The problem is that one starts getting a little drier centered relative to the top three. As you step back off of that one, that was tighter in terms of how it handles the rear leg, a little shorter, tighter, and bunched up in terms of its muscle pattern. I want to go ahead and drop that and loose it and organize it a little bit more, give it some more center body, and I think it'd change that hog quite a bit. Like that hog better in terms of center body and cavity. I think this one just gets a little bowed in terms of its rear leg. That one's not as wide in terms of its pin and aggressive in terms of its shape. You change that one's rear leg, it gets in the top three conversation as well. Fresh shaped white gilt coming in next. Bold in terms of its center body. That one's done hinges nice out of its rear leg. Gets a little more timid, even though it's square and flatter from joint. But gets too rolled up in its blade. As we work down the lineup, here's a really wide constructed one that's bold. He's too outside of himself and needs to be more compositionally correct. A little bit more frail featured one that gets too upright and timid off both ends of his skeleton. And that's so on and so forth. The conversation as we get low with hogs that just need more power and skeletal quality.
Amy Rupp with England Volkers grew up in Cache Valley, now lives in Box Elder County and can't imagine calling anywhere else home. The people, places, and gorgeous open landscapes serve as her constant inspiration. Amy serves Box Elder and Cache County in residential sales with knowledge and expertise in large acreage and ranch listings. If experience is what you're looking for, look no further than Amy Rupp. Amy is a proud supporter of the Box Elder County Livestock Auction.
R&B Livestock Solutions has you covered for custom fencing, grazing, and livestock transportation. Give Rhett Munns a call today.
Kent's is your one-stop shop for fresh produce, bakery items, deli, and meat. Stop by today for fast, friendly service.
Rudd Funeral Home is a locally owned family-operated business. Joe Rudd and his family, as well as their devoted staff, are committed to providing you with the best service possible during a difficult time. Their beautiful facilities have all the necessary amenities. A large viewing room can also double as a smaller, more intimate funeral chapel. The chapel is even equipped with streaming capabilities to make sure family and friends are connected no matter how far they may be. Rudd Funeral Home is there to help you in your time of need.
I think a nice set of barrows to start off on this. We're going to elect to start the young man's blueberry to begin. This one's got a lot of side appeal from the standpoint that he's level, he fits, he's big-legged, big-featured. You get him behind this guy, he's got a lot of natural shape reading out of the backside of his blade, and you get him behind him, he's probably the best in regards to staying big in terms of his tail root and pin set, but staying wide and true to the corners of his skeleton. Now, with that said, I'd actually probably like to freshen him up and elevate him. When he comes at me, he wants to roll his toes just ever so slightly in. But those are things that kind of fit together, maybe freshen him up in his lower third as well. The next one's probably a little more unconventional. I don't know what his actual breed type is, but we're going to use a young man's belted hog here in the middle. This one looks probably a little more conventional in terms of a Hampshire breed character in my mind. And that's where some of those things kind of fit for him. That one's got a really fresh top in him. And honestly, even though he doesn't have maybe the added feature and stoutness and power, that hog actually fits together really, really well with a true, genuine lean shape. Compositionally, I actually like him better in terms of his fat lean to ratio than the class winner. That one actually has got a really nice hind leg and is tall at the point of his shoulder. He just gets a little short in terms of how he sits out of the front side of his blade and elevation from that point. In terms of head carriage, at Barrett's good, fresh-bodied, but would just be opened up a shot more. After that, we're going to use the one that's probably just a little more trendy in terms of elevation, and that's going to be young man's white gilt here. She is being an absolute blister for you to try to show right now, young man, and I apologize for that. This is probably the one in terms of just being big-footed and how that one sits at the surface coming at me might be second best in class behind the Hampshire Bear that just left. I love that one in terms of the elevation of its blade. Really, really lean and crisp in terms of its edge coming up high. The problem is that hog gets just a little old in terms of his look, but more specifically, he's getting big, and I like him tall fronted, I like him extended, but we got to stay bulky and bold in terms of his center body. He just kind of gets outwhelmed in terms of just freshness of body and shape in the middle. Belted hog that stays in the third is better in that category. When you get right in behind that one, that's a bigger blade one that's actually better right here in terms of the turn of the center point of his, behind his shoulder. That one's big in its arm and big in its hip. It just doesn't operate the same degree. That one wants to get just a little more puffy in its joints, gets a little more hindered in how it's timid out of its rear foot, softer in terms of its front toe, and needs to lay its blade both in angle and into its forerib just a little bit better. We'll talk the next couple just real briefly when we start talking about the blue gilt. Highly presented. Love this one and how it fits together. Probably shaved just a little too short for me. I don't like them fuzzy, but I like them just a little more natural. When we start looking at like this, that's a big-bodied, huge-bladed hog that just needs freshened up in terms of its center third. It's starting to get just a little chubby, and that hog needs more extended angulation off either end to give it a bigger range of motion. Really long spine one in the next spot. That one's starting to get too upright in his toes and stilty in terms of how it sits out of his front end. That one's just a little more rigid and flat. As we work down, need to be better in terms of just general width and freshen up in terms of body shape, and that's kind of skeletal quality conversation and just bulk and natural muscle shape that works down the line.
Schaefer Farms. We grow family, friends, and high-quality crops. Swing by the fielding location and pick up some delicious homegrown food today. Miller Medical is ready to care for clients with full services for family medical. They also offer beauty and spa health treatments with hot stone and IV vitamin therapies, as well as Botox. Let Miller Medical take care of all your healthcare needs.
Rupp Trucking and Excavating is a family-owned and operated construction business specializing in site prep and site utilities. Brothers Blaine and Brent Rupp have spent the last 45 years priding themselves on a project well done. What began small has turned into a company of over 70 employees performing contracts up to $20 million and includes work such as demolition, sewer and water installation, earthwork, septic systems, and waste containers. Rupp's operates several gravel pits and offers both delivery and pickup. Contact Rupp's for your construction needs.
Nice class. We're going to use old Sling Blade here to win. This one's fresh in terms of how it's put together. You get it from the side. That hog probably proportions as well as any in terms of elevation of shoulder and still keeping his head carriage the right way. That one's the squarest coming and going at me in terms of the base of its chest and forearm. I love the fresh body shape as we step away. And those are the things that kind of put together a package that just fits. Now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and use the young lady's blown gland barrier here, Gilt, to go ahead and go second. There's things that I really admire. This one actually has more elevation, and when that one gets that head up and actually comes directly at me, I actually am not sure that one's better in terms of the base of his chest. Does he stay quite as true in terms of where he sits at his knee? I don't know. But when you step back in him, as much as I'd love to say that one sits there and he's fresh, that gland is just a blown gland. That one's actually really lean, probably leaner than your class winner. He's got a fresh shape. He needs to be bolder in terms of his center body. That hog needs to be square from hock down and opened up in his pins. Third place hog's going to be young lady's black gilt here up in the middle. I just think this is a useful market hog. Actually might be a little more aggressive to the turn in the latter part of its sirloin. That one's got more shape and turn to the base of its center of its ham than your second place hog. The problem is you get that one in and they all have muscle, so as much as I love the comparison, that hog gets more upright in terms of its shoulder. That one doesn't sit as good in terms of how it transitions its center body and rear flank, but that's a fresh, good market hog. It's going to have a ton of value when we string them upside down. The Berkshire floats up through here, and I'm not saying the Berkshire has all the eye appeal in the world. That one gets a little frail and round off both ends relative to maybe what I'm trying to picture in my head, and your hog's ahead of it. The thing is the longer we watch this one go, this is probably one of the next best, most comfortable hogs in this. It still has a youthful look and has a great shape. That one, they've still got to be meat animals. That one's got a huge turn, especially for its breed type. When you get right on top of him, coming down his top, that one's got a big upper hip and a great shape to his rear, shape to the base of his ham. You step back off of him, he's actually better than the third place one right there at the seat of his pants. We just want to make that one look a little more like a show hog in terms of making him balance and making his angles. Hog comes in next too as we work down the line, and we'll talk the next two. That one's got a good wide shape, probably wider constructed in terms of the base of its chest. That one isn't as wide pinned and shapely in the lower third. That one gets more rigid of its rear leg. This one, for those of you who like it, is burly. I'm not going to sit there and argue that. That's a big featured one. Looks a little mature to me in how it fits. He gets more upright at his blade. He's not as good in terms of his center body and his coarser nose joint. As we work down the lineup, just some differences in terms of skeletal quality, comfort, and then as we get down to the end, we need him to be just more shapely and muscular.
Central Milling Company is a proud supporter of the Box Elder County Fair. Select the best products for your family by using Central Milling Company. Tree Mountain City, creating a safe and welcoming community where neighbors feel connected to each other and enjoy life.
Representing the finest properties in the area. You're thinking of Farmhouse Realty. From farms and ranches to first homes to second homes and everything in between. My mission is helping you pursue a new home or a new property. As a local farmer myself, I'm no stranger to tightening up my bootstraps, dirtying my hands, and getting down to work for my clients. Exceeding your expectations isn't the exception, it's our standard. From first homes to farms and every acre in between, let Farmhouse Realty Group get to work for you.
If you are in need of financial assistance, call Dusty Roach at Lincoln Financial. He and his friendly staff have the expertise you'll need.
I think there's a nice top 5 that just come in a little different flavors as we go. And ultimately, I want to emphasize that I'm trying to find the one that I think puts the most good together, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. We're going to use Young Man and Beyonce to start. I ultimately elect on this one and say that's the squarest one, the proportions best. That one sits big out square in its hip and its pin and stays square coming away from you in terms of its hock placement, truly on the corners of its edges of its body. And then when it comes at me, it does the same thing. Now, with that said, that one's highly presented, and that surely doesn't hurt. That's not why I'm sorting them that way, but she's done a really good job putting that one together. That one's not quite as good in terms of extension out of its front end. I like them proportional. We use this term short back. Short back was an origin supposed to be a conversation of balance, and I think we can do that. I'm not opposed to going ahead and giving that one more rib and one more vertebrae in terms of how he sits out of his back, out of the top side of his crest and his neck. But with that said, that's the best one to put some most pieces together. When I start talking about extension, that's where I like 2 better, and that's going to be Young Lady's other black gilt here. I think this one sits pretty square from behind. I don't know if that one's as good in terms of its natural body cavity all the way through and turn, and that's a hard thing to do when you start stretching them just a little bit. I like that one in terms of length of skeleton and elevation quite a bit too. When that one drives wet at you, and it's a hard read because that one is absolutely being a bear and an animal to try to get drove. I don't know if that one sits as good in terms of his front toes. I think he sits down too low, wants to come in just ever so slightly in his knee. I just don't know if that one's kind of as naturally wide. After that, it turns into a little bit more of a conversation piece on me between the 3, because there's pieces I really want to tie into, and then there's pieces that trouble me as I continue to work through this. Ultimately, I think the next best hog out here, make sure I get my views right, is this young man's gilt right here. Had belted hogs, and I tend to forget kids' faces. My apologies on that. That one is really good in terms of just being fresh, square chested. That one's got a really good forerib shape and how he fits from the side. That one's able to reach and drive its rear leg. The problem with me is I get in behind that one. That one's not as good in terms of his rear joint. That gilt wants to bush and bow just ever so slightly. I want to clean that joint up, clean the bone work up, and then we'll have a different conversation. The fresher shaped one's going to be here in the 4 spot of the 2. I just think this one reads more compositionally appropriate in terms of trimness. That one is good in terms of being bigger, in terms of shape to its leg, base of its ham, bigger bone, just gets a little more joint. I struggle with this hog because there are things that I love. That one's naturally tall-shouldered. That one's naturally square-chested. That one actually is pretty impressive in terms of how that one feeds right behind his blade and has actual turn right here. I like this one from the side, and I think she proportions. The problem I get is this 3/4 view, and he drives away. That hog isn't as fresh in terms of his flesh. He gets just a little chubby down low, and then it is that naturally his honest shape as you read the stifle and the base of his ham. That one's not as dimensional how he fits. That one's a good kind of hog. He just isn't quite as honest in terms of his muscularity. That's where he stands there, highly presented, big bone, square, good livestock. Don't ever sway away from that. I just need him to have just a shot more honest punch from behind. As we work down, I'm going to talk this one, and then we get into skeletal qualities. I told this young lady that this is a really tall-fronted one. I like this one in terms of extension. His jawline from a cosmetics point is really nice. That one's actually got more turn at the base of his ham and stifle than the hog we just talked about. I don't know if that one's as opened up. That one's a little more timid in terms of his joint. His toes are long and his feet are down. I need to fix them at the surface. Again, skeletal quality turns into a conversation. We need to clean up their joint work. There's a big-bodied one that needs freshened up in terms of his composition. And then we start talking about some compositionally correct hogs that just need to be opened up, wider, and better looking.
Whether you are purchasing a car, buying a home, managing an investment property, starting a small business, or leaving behind a legacy, American Family Insurance will help you protect your dream. Bear River Live is proud to bring you another production, Talk of the Town. These weekly episodes will bring local stories to life and keep you informed on what is happening in the community, as well as business spotlights and expert tips.
Schooler, let's get growing. Your partner for grain and feed, merchandising, marketing, storage, and logistics.
I think in this particular class, what I have to do is continue to remember how they come back to me in terms of impressions, because we're going to take a few different conversations that maybe we haven't had at this point and trying to find this kind of utopia of balance points between some production, quality, show pigs, and some carcass composition. In my mind, there is one that fits the best in all those categories, and that's going to be the belted hog with the young lady right in front of me. This is not the EST hog in any category in this particular drive. There are stouter ones, there are bolder ones, there are wider ones. This one's probably as good skeleton as any hog out here, and you get it from the side. That one's got a really loose, relaxed leg angle to its knee. That one's appropriate in terms of muscularity. I'm going to go ahead and set this up for a reference points in here because I like them muscular. That's obvious. I've been trying to find bold, productive, wide ones that have added substance. That's part of a show hog, and when you're trying to find the ones that are kind of unique on the outliers. The conversation when we start talking about muscle and how we evolve is honestly, even in a commodity hog, we can't hardly find one that's under 6 inches anymore in terms of eye. Honestly, if we cross 10 from a consumer product, it's almost too much. That hog's probably in the mid-low 7s. I think it's fine. It's good where it is, and it's good in terms of its fat to lean ratio. Good skeleton, good quality hog. Then we're going to flip gears, and we're actually going to use the red barra to go 2. For you guys that say, well, that is a coarse, not that good looking, typical red bear, you are 100% correct. And I'm not picking on your hog, man. He just is. That's kind of the breed of the nature of the beast. But when we step back and try to keep this kind of fundamental, I think this is the next best one in trying to do things right. He is an animal. Just a beast when he comes at you in terms of the center part of his knee and his chest. That dude's got a gnarly skull shape because he's so wide, so productive in his center cage. That one's actually got a big pin set. Duroc's got a different muscle type in them in a general sense, and that's kind of just the nature of that beast too, but he's actually ties deep. He's got some edge, he's got some turn. Probably needs to be freshened up in composition from a cosmetic standpoint. He just gets a shot crusty. Then you're left with 2 hogs that kind of fit. And I know that some of you guys are thinking, well, man, you just kind of forgot about that red spotted up hog out here. No, I didn't. The problem is that one's not a show bearer, and I don't try to pretend that he is, but I would argue from a composition standpoint, that might be the best one here. He's still wide. He's bold in his center cage. He's functionally sound, and he does proportion. He just doesn't come with any extra bells and whistles, and he's just conventional in his look. He's good in terms of the topside shape. He's good in terms of where he is from a fat standpoint and wide constructed. That's a productive hog that does things the way he's supposed to do. Problem is he's not a show bearer. That's why he ends up being in the 3rd spot. York hog down here is better in terms of a good-looking one that's got just probably a little more aesthetic rear leg, handles himself well. That's a dry rib hog that honestly gets too lean from a composition standpoint. And I am changing the conversation what I've been talking about, but that's what I'm presented with. We really need him to have more than 5/10, ideally 7/10. That hog's on the line, and because side drives product, but that's a nice hog that's balanced. I just need him to be bulked up. On the flip side, the next one that comes out, wherever the black hog went, I think that one exited the ring. Fits really nice in regards to how that one comes together from a balance standpoint. We had a hog that exited the ring that honestly looks a little higher presented. That one gets a little chubby on the flip side. This one gets a little skinny. And we try to go back and forth, kind of trying to balance those things. One that's got some width, but maybe gets a little round jointed and coarse and bulked up. Honestly, from a carcass standpoint, this one's extremely good for the young lady's belted hog. So we just maybe didn't find the theme that we were looking for, but that's how I logic too, trying to find the middle ground between. Give them a round of applause as we go through. We've got lots of muscle all the way. At just a quality imbalance.
Rudd Funeral Home is there to serve your family in your time of need.
Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free.
Rock and Roll Construction Products, providing U-Cart concrete and landscaping products. For a genuinely warm welcome with small town friendly service, stop by the grill. They have slowly smoked ribs, wings, and briskets, along with homemade appetizers, unique sandwiches, pizzas, and burgers. The grill is a perfect location for family get-togethers or business lunches. They can even cater. For added fun, call the Bear River Bowling Center and reserve a lane. No matter what you like, the grill has something for everyone. Tanglewood Studios has something for everyone, whether it's dance, cheer, color guard, or gymnastics. There's even recreational all-boys gymnastics along with Mamma Me classes. Family rates are available, so come join the fun.
Lincoln Financial specializes in estate, investment, and retirement planning, as well as business benefits. At Lincoln, they are totally impartial, comb through different options to create financial products a person needs. Lincoln Financial, big city service, small town care.
sometimes the road kind of gets a little interesting as times based on what's presented at you. With that said, as we come back to the conclusion of the division, there's a theme of what I'm trying to find, and that's pretty apparent. There's still differences within them, and I'll just kind of talk briefly about what I'm in front of me. Beyonce is exactly what she is. That's a big backed one that's got a big pin set in her. We talked about her in class, maybe just not quite as loose in how she hinges from an ideal in my mind out of her front blade. Maybe we want her more extended. That one's elevated, but we just want to go ahead and extend and give it some more natural jaw shape and width right there. The power that makes it just look a little more immature and growthy, but nonetheless, I think that's a really nice hog. The hog out of our last class, as we take it forward, that was the quality one in class. That one's not outlier in any particular regard. You get that one from the side, I think you draw up a great image. That one looks like a gilt's supposed to, or just a nice hog, has width at the base of its jaw, but that's still square chested, the angle, flexibility, comfort. This still has a natural muscle shape and a good underline in terms of its underlying quality. And I'm not talking about teat placement. I'm talking about how you draw that one up from a silhouette is really good. From behind, that is one of the better jointed, maybe the best jointed hog in here. But we just want to open that one up as we start thinking about that next one in terms of what's the best. The blue barra that comes out and we talked about in class, we thought that was the best one in class, still do in terms of trying to find balance points of what was presented to us. He's still where the problem lies. We want to lay him back in his blade. We want to make him more secure and square from behind and freshen him in his bottom third. Hog out of our first class. That one has been in my head for a long time because I love this one from a composition standpoint. That one is so good and big in terms of expression out of its backside of its shoulder. That one spreads huge in terms of a turn with a huge stifle. That one's okay in terms of body shape. I think it's natural, and honestly, I think that's still probably the leanest hog out here by some margin. Good or bad, I don't know if it matters. That one, I think, unbounds, but it's just a little plainer. I love that one's jaw set and how it fits. Well, I don't necessarily need them razor jawed. I just want them to fit together and have width and power and density and how that fits. It does that very well. Old sling blade, man, that's probably the squarest chested one. That's the roundest rib that still sits in square from behind. Just kind of proportions really good and has some of the extras in terms of power and center body. Your champion division. We talked about this blown gland gilt in class, and we like this one in terms of the elevation. We love that one in terms of just being square and genuine. We said that one needed to be more opened up. There's a hog that I think is the second best in here. That's going to end up being the class 1 out of this division champion, here 2.
Whether you are buying or selling, you need to know you have someone in your corner who can help you get through that process. The realtors at Coldwell Banker are there to help you get into your home, whether it's a starter or your forever. Let Trudy Hatch and Shannon Johnson help you get into the home of your dreams. They're your local experts for all your mortgage needs. Give them a call today.
Rigby Chiropractic, promoting health and wellness locally with a personal touch.
As we continue getting these heavier weights, we're going to have more conversation on trying to keep them fresh. I do think there's one that just kind of wins this for fun. That's going to be young ladies in front of me. That hog actually fits together really nice. I like going driving at me quite a bit in terms of squareness, natural rib cage and body. He's fresh and honest in terms of his shape. He is a little weird in terms of how he handles his rear leg, not from a standpoint that he doesn't have flex and drive. I think there's some hogs that maybe from an ideal standpoint I'd like to be square and truer in terms of his weight distribution. I think the bigger problem with him is more of a cosmetic appeal because he sits his tail head just a shot low, and because of that he looks a little rounder hip than maybe he is. Not saying he doesn't have some roundness, but that also kind of just highlights that as well. We got a longer leveler hog that's taller at the point of his shoulder is going to be in the white hog second. I do want to go ahead and freshen this one up, and I admit this quite a bit. I think there's a couple hogs behind him, specifically the blue hog, that's going to be better and fresher in terms of its shape. With that said, this still got width. This one's square. That one's truer in terms of weight distribution near class winner and tall in terms of his shoulder. I just think that's the next best quality one that still fits together in terms of composition acceptability. After that, we are going to end up going back into the young ladies, kind of rough-haired blue gilt here. In my mind, these are two hogs that are fresh and wide in terms of their muscularity. I do think there's some differences. I think this one handles its rear leg just a little more athletic and drive behind. Nothing to take away the better presented blue gilt right behind her. This one's huge in terms of the back, better in terms of his forerib. I just wish that hog would utilize its rear leg, maybe lay back in its angle of its pastern a little bit. You make your call there. As we kind of work down, we have other hogs. This young man's done a great job presenting that one and getting top shape fed into that. As you back off, that's a fragile featured one that just gets a little tight out of his rear leg that needs to be more massive in his lower third. This one's a great carcass hog that gets too narrow in terms of his chest rolled up in his shoulder. I love that one from just a composition balance standpoint that just doesn't have enough power and balance. And as we work down the lineup, more fragile featured ones that maybe just get a little chuffy, ones that are maybe just a little too narrow in terms of their general build.
There's a lot to know when it comes to buying insurance. That's why it's important to have an independent agent looking out for you and your family. Whatever you're looking to protect, Advanced Insurance Services can help. Let Sherry Pally help make sure you have the right coverage and are getting all the discounts you deserve. She can shop several carriers to find the company that is right for you. Call for a free insurance review today. Roach Ranches supports the people that support them and the fantastic youth of the Valley. Thank you for over 60 years in business, quality seed stocking, gravel, and hunting.
Amy Rupp with England Volkers grew up in Cache Valley, now lives in Box Elder County and can't imagine calling anywhere else home. The people, places, and gorgeous open landscapes serve as her constant inspiration. Amy serves Box Elder and Cache County in residential sales with knowledge and expertise in large acreage and ranch listings. If experience is what you're looking for, look no further than Amy Rupp. Amy is a proud supporter of the Box Elder County Livestock Auction.
nice class as we get into the heavies of later maturing hogs that are just denser. And like we talked about, that's going to create some different challenges than we had earlier. These aren't going to be grow issues in terms of later maturing. It's how they manage and balance as they go. And I like them to still be productive. The other thing I'm going to say, too, before I start, if you haven't figured it out now, I'm not prejudiced to any color. The red hog wins. I'll use breed hogs. I just like good ones. And in my mind, this is the one that hits together quite well. From the side, especially for a red hog, that one actually ties pretty good in terms of its jawline and its symmetry from the profile. But more importantly, let's go back to basics. If you haven't figured out, I like that quite a bit. That's a square-chested one that's fresh in terms of its shape, good in terms of its body. That one going away is the more organized in terms of how its muscle sets and square and true at the ground. Red hogs have, and this is a theory in my mind, they got a rounder muscle shape in them, and that's not a theory, that's a fact. I think that's interesting in how they tie at the base and gives them just a little different look in how they mobilize their rear leg. That one's rear leg, long, level hip, good set. That's just a nice hog. The next best balanced one's going to be the belted hog, and I like this one quite a bit from the side. That's a pretty tall shouldered one that's actually really good in terms of its elevation and head carriage from a presentation standpoint. It fits together. Problem is that one's just stout enough. That one's starting to get just a little chubby. You get behind. That one's just a shot plain, not only in terms of feature, but more importantly, natural width and power. I go sit back and I struggle, and then I've got this just burly stout one that's going to go third in terms of young ladies blue barra. That dude is a beast in terms of just power and shape. Problem is it compromises his mobility and comfort. He gets too short out of his hip, pushes his hock, too chuffy and coarse and bold out of his front end. I struggle just a little bit back and forth in this. Ultimately, the one I think that balances better is going to be the belted hog that's going to go third. Both these hogs are fourth. Both these hogs are sounder than the blue bear. I've got no argument in that. That one's still a little steep and round out of its rear leg. I'd like that one to be just a little more secure. That's a better, fresher bodied one that's still bigger and wider in terms of its base construction of its chest, its forerib. Still feeds big in terms of its shape with turn out of its base of its ham. From a carcass standpoint, I think this Burke influence hog's actually pretty solid, and that's what stands up here. And the longer it goes, that one's a no thrills hogs. That one's pretty average in terms of its body shape and width. The thing is that one probably fits together better in terms of keeping carcass in mind and still being sound and useful in terms of its rear leg. That's a longer spine one that's going to have a ton of value upside down. As we work down, we have hogs that are just a little chubby and frail, ones that don't put their organization together. Maybe they're just a shot skinny in terms of their general make as we work down the line, but nonetheless, a really nice set from top to bottom.
R&B Livestock Solutions has you covered for custom fencing, grazing, and livestock transportation. Give Rhett Munns a call today.
Kent's is your one-stop shop for fresh produce, bakery items, deli, and meat. Stop by today for fast, friendly service.
Rudd Funeral Home is a locally owned, family-operated business. Joe Rudd and his family, as well as their devoted staff, are committed to providing you with the best service possible during a difficult time. Their beautiful facilities have all the necessary amenities. A large viewing room can also double as a smaller, more intimate funeral chapel. The chapel is even equipped with streaming capabilities to make sure family and friends are connected no matter how far they may be. Rudd Funeral Home is there to help you in your time of need. Schaefer Farms. We grow family, friends, and high-quality crops. Swing by the Fielding location and pick up some delicious homegrown food today.
As we get in these heavier weights, I'm liking what I see in terms of still keeping them fresh on the top side. I think the young lady's Barra in the middle wins this just pretty logically. He's the one that probably puts the most pieces together in regards when that one's coming at you, he is beast mode, really square chested, stout jawed, still has some assembly in terms of the angle to his blade and this curvature to his knee that he sits down with some comfort. That dude sits and has some levelness down his top line, reads really big and fresh on the top side of his skeleton with bold. That dude's maybe just a little bit swivels for me, and I don't think he's outside by any stretch of the imagination, but man, I like to just gather him a little bit as he goes. I think the second blessed hog in here is going to be young lady's belted Barra here right in front of me. He's kind of a hard one to read, highly presented, and when you get off of him, I would like to change maybe he handles his rear leg, give him more shot in the seam of his ham, but when we step back and study him, he flexes and goes. He's probably just a little squarer in terms of his joint work. He's got some elevation. The hog's kind of deceiving until you get right up on him. He's actually one of the next best ones in terms of just center body and still maintaining levelness. Nothing to take away from the blue bear that's going to go third. I like this guy a lot better in terms of his aesthetics from the side. He's incredibly tall shoulder, and not just in terms of his elevation to the top side, but study that guy at his point of his shoulder and the base of his sternum. That guy's actually got some elevation there and actually presents himself very well and puts his angles together nice. As you go on top of him, though, he's plainer shaped, he's flatter ribbed. I don't think he's naturally opened up in his pin as the bear in front of him. The bear that goes third or fourth, I'm actually going to really praise in this regard. He just looks like a productive, good kind of feeding hog. If I had a finisher floor full of these, because they can't all be show pigs, I'd be very happy. He's bold body, he's wide constructed, he's got muscle. He's just too generic. He's ambulatory sound and functional in terms of his build. We just need him to make him more presentation when you bring him to a show. But that's good kind of livestock. Don't ever be ashamed of productive ones that do what they're supposed to do. As we work down the line, here's one that's got more elevation that just starts getting too full, not necessarily as natural in terms of its how that top shape feeds relative to the lower third dimension. We have another one that kind of fits that category in terms of being bold, just a little steeper and plainer, but highly presented. And then an extremely lean, muscular, expressive hog that gets too straight shouldered and flat and raw in terms of this build. As we work down the line, more of the conversation is a balance standpoint of maybe they're too straight bladed, ones that have just a little too much fill become too narrow, and as these heavier weights become coarse jointed ones that maybe just don't have the same comfort, but man, burly, dense, tall shouldered. Give them a big hand as they head back to the barn.
Miller Medical is ready to care for clients with full services for family medical. They also offer beauty and spa health treatments with hot stone and IV vitamin therapies, as well as Botox. Let Miller Medical take care of all your healthcare needs.
Rupp Trucking Excavating is a family-owned and operated construction business specializing in site prep and site utilities. Brothers Blaine and Brent Rupp have spent the last 45 years priding themselves on a project well done. What began small has turned into a company of over 70 employees performing contracts up to $20 million and includes work such as demolition, sewer and water installation, earthwork, septic systems, and waste containers. Rupp's operates several gravel pits and offers both delivery and pickup. Contact Rupp's for your construction needs.
As we conclude with our heavyweights, obviously we're getting them pretty big, and that's okay. We sell them by the pound as long as they can hold together. I'm actually pro growth and production traits. As we sit back, maybe we don't have one that fits everything together, but I do think there's one that's the highest quality. That's going to be Young Ladies that comes out right here. This one is the most aggressive in terms of the turn of his back, the span of his pin, and the width, especially coming at you. That's where I like this bear the best in this particular drive, is the base of his chest and his knee and how he sits together from that category. I think all of them are maybe have some differences in terms of mobility and flex as they've gotten to this weight. Maybe that hog wanted to level him and set him down in his spine and fix the angle to his blade, but nonetheless, I think that's a high quality one. The one that I think actually is probably the most immature and youthful in this particular set is actually the red belted hog. That one's going to be 2. Production traits, production traits, production traits. We need to make sure that we keep them in mind because it's founded out of that type of principle when we start talking about this activity. He's actually really fresh in terms of his shape. He's fresh in terms of his center body. He's probably the best one in terms of his actual back fat call when you start talking about an ideal. He's got a huge shape, huge pin. That dude needs to be square in terms of his chest. That dude could flex just a little better in terms of some conventional ideas to take the next step. But man, that one's a really, really practical one. Extra long spine one that's actually square in terms of its knee coming at me into the blue-eyed gilt standing third. I like that one from a length and levelness standpoint. That one's a productive body. Starting to get just a little on the chuffy side. The problem is with that one is we start to go on build in general, that one gets too forward at its knee, too soft on its pastern, and because of that, it's starting to lose its top. I think that one struggles and pushes out of its front end as much as it's got maybe some cosmetic appeal. That's why it's staying outside. As we work down the line, we kind of have some similar conversation we had. Good shaped one that's maybe just not quite as opened up. That one's starting to get a little upright in its blade and loses some balance in that standpoint. Barrett comes out next. Has some unique pieces, and that's what I told the young lady when we sent her the pin. That one's huge pinned. That one's actually really nice in terms of some tallness and elevation of the sternum and point of shoulder. But that one pushes its hock, doesn't have quite the same dimension at the seat of its pants. That one, even though it's deep-sided, isn't as bold rib. That's why he sorts down. We work down the line, maybe we're just not as comfortable and organized in terms of our skeleton. Maybe we get just a little chubby. Maybe we have a lot of shape in terms of muscularity, but our body isn't right and we aren't as organized in how we navigate our rear or front legs. That turns into the conversation. Give them a big hand as they retire to the barn.
Tree Mountain City, creating a safe and welcoming community where neighbors feel connected to each other and enjoy life.
Representing the finest properties in the area. You're thinking of Farmhouse Realty. From farms and ranches to first homes to second homes and everything in between. My mission is helping you pursue a new home or a new property. As a local farmer myself, I'm no stranger to tightening up my bootstraps, dirtying my hands, and getting down to work for my clients. Exceeding your expectations isn't the exception, it's our standard. From first homes to farms and every acre in between, let Farmhouse Realty Group get to work for you.
If you are in need of financial assistance, call Dusty Roach at Lincoln Financial. He and his friendly staff have the expertise you'll need.
Whether you are purchasing a car, buying a home, managing an investment property, starting a small business, or leaving behind a legacy, American Family Insurance will help you protect your dream.
We would like to thank Western Tire Recyclers for the buckles for the championship drive winners. Thank you again, Western Tire Recyclers.
As we come to the conclusion of our heavy division, I'm extremely happy with what's out here. And as always, there's differences. The hog in front of me out of what I think was class 2, class 2, whatever class, 2 or 3. This one is really appealing directly when it comes at me. He's stout at the base of the jaw, but that's a huge forearm, extra square-chested one that has some elevation. I think his body feed's good, and he's huge in terms of his back. The thing that I probably the most critical on is we said maybe he's navigating to maybe the outside of his skeleton. I don't know if he's doing that. I think he's timid in how he sets down and just has a little hiccup and circle as he goes. He doesn't flex and operate that rear leg with the same comfort and athleticism that I find ideal with a little added set. The bear out of our heavy division, we talk about starting to get a little mature and cresty, and that just comes with that heavy weight. That one's got a good shape, big pin. That one's just a little steeper in circles and paddles. Doesn't come with the same aesthetics as maybe some others in freshness, but that's a really, really good hog. The hog out of our first class of this division is one that I think balances really nice. With that said, I think he's just a little modest. We talked about him being round in his hip. I do think the angles are effective and operate correctly. I think when you step back off of him, this is a consequence of taking short back and maybe making it just a little more interesting in how he fits. I don't think his hip length is the same as the operation. Because of that, hogs are going to have a naturally a little lower pin set, which is fine. I don't think that gives him the ability to reach and drive to the same degree, and that creates a round shape as he comes at you. That dude's not quite as square as some other options in terms of where he sits at the base of his knee. The red hog's obviously the outlier in terms of his breed type and kind. There's some interesting pieces. That's not the most overpowering one. I think that's actually the most useful one out here. The thing that's interesting on that one is they all got muscle. You step in behind, that one's got the most reach and drive in terms of its rear leg. That's the one that's the squarest when he sits down behind him. That's going to be your heavy champion. The one behind is a good-looking one that we said probably just needs a shot more width than natural, but that was the highest quality one. I think there's another one that sits in that's really unique, just a little timid in how it sits down its rear leg. You're 2.
River Live is proud to bring you another production, Talk of the Town. These weekly episodes will bring local stories to life and keep you informed on what is happening in the community, as well as business spotlights and expert tips.
Our championship drive, McCall Cook, Tyler Eddington, Stetson Westmoreland, Ari Smith, Oakley Burton, and Chloe Woodward.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this comes to the conclusion of all the hogs I have to judge and hog divisions I have to judge, is why my time here, and I greatly appreciate the invitation. As I said in the last couple things, I'm trying to find just short reflection moments at the end of each grand drive, and because every kid in every division, if they're not showing on species, they need their moment and they need their idea in that. I think the thing that comes to mind as I build to what I'm thinking of what I'm going to use for the last one in the steer show is I want you guys to think about what it takes to be here. An incredible amount of discipline. Discipline is something that causes you, that it's easy to be excited and enthusiastic of a problem, but discipline is what allows you to embrace the grind. The grind is what makes you better. The grind is what actually allows you to grow as an individual, as a stockman, as a business person, as an athlete, whatever the case may be. You have to love the grind. And what that means is these kids have more grind in terms of presentation, and think about the success they're going to have in life because they're willing to embrace the work. They're not here for the moment. They didn't get here because they showed up today to play. They got here because they worked all summer to make them the way they're supposed to be. think about that as we continue to go forward, and you got to appreciate that. If you're a little upset today, remember it's one man's opinion and a different perspective. We made that comment last night that one of the best growing pieces of this activity is because there is some subjectivity in it. If you listen to me today, I talked about balance, I talked about show ring, but if you listen to what my conversation was, I still believe that this needs to be warranted out of production, agriculture, and food animal design. We need to have fundamentals. We need to have basics, and these hogs have that. Every business and every species that I've sorted that, they've had those pieces. Once they're established, now let's go for the fun trend pieces to make them unique. I'm all in that regard. So keep that in the back of your head and teach those kids the perspectives of understanding different vantage points. As I coach judging teams, one of my biggest things that I do is I tell these kids, we're not going to go look at show livestock and Denver champions or whatever show that you want to talk about every day. We're going to go and we're going to do trips, and we're going to go through commercial bulls. We're going to go through finisher flogs of deal. And I got a workout in Pennsylvania that I love, because this is in our part of the world. We don't go find people that raise 100 rams a year. I just start pulling ram classes. That's fun. And that makes you embrace the grind and understand what works, what doesn't, and where the lines fall, because the lines change on every perspective. Grow, be better. Make yourself have an independent mind, because we need it more today than we ever have. I'll get off my soapbox. I think there's 3 hogs out here that I like, and obviously they come in a little different color. They have some different unique pieces. But if you can't figure out that I had a theme that I was trying to find out here, maybe we need to reevaluate, or I do too. The lightweight, we talked about that one in class, maybe just a little more mature for me in some regard, especially for that weight, but incredibly unique when you get in behind that one. I said in the division, if somebody brought me one that had a bigger pin and hip in them, I'd be highly surprised. It didn't happen. That one is enormous in terms of its shape, and quite honestly has some uniqueness in terms of elevation of his front. Maybe we need to be a little more sensible and unique, and maybe I think that one balances. I think you could be used in a lot of different places. I'm not sure where I sit yet, but man, that one's stout. The belted hog out of our middle division, I think proportions incredibly well. That one's probably just a little more toned down in how it fits, and because of that, everything blends. That one's really good and square in its chest, fresh and youthful in terms of its head carriage and how it fits from there down, and just incredibly comfortable in how it feels it track is set to its rear leg. Has some athleticism that stays within itself. Then you got the Duroc. Little different breed. But guys, sit back and appreciate that one as that one goes. That one's actually the most flexible in terms of its spine because of its added length throughout its entire body, length of front, length of hip, and still has natural dimension and width. Maybe one that maybe could be up on his toes just a shot more, but that one's not wrong in any particular category. This is a preference call. I think there's one that balances the most to me. That's going to be your middleweight. He'll be champion. Made no bones about it. This one was in my head a lot in that middle division because I love that one in terms of freshness of shape, squareness from behind, heaviness of skeleton. And that one's not razor jawed. I don't need him to be razor jawed. I just need him to blend. That one's stout and dense in terms of how it fits in terms of its head, and that correlates back in terms of real world production. Big forearm, big bladed, big legged hog that has a tremendous amount of muscle. Is there some more flexible options out here? Yes, that one's not unsound by any stretch of the imagination, probably just a little plainer in its rib. So we have this conversation of muscle, unique feature, and then one that's probably just more flexible and youthful. I like the red hog for reserve.
Grand Champion Hog, Stetson Westmoreland. Reserve Champion, Oakley Burton. Again, we'd like to thank our judge today, Ben Williamson. Thank you for joining us in our ring.
Real quick before we leave, guys, every show takes a lot of help, and we need to make sure we thank everybody because it takes a crew to pull this off. Hog Show is probably a little more unique because as these guys are trying to keep hogs out of the gate, I called them my Spartans over here on the side. They were being Roman soldiers to keep those things battling. I appreciate the help and also keeping my numbers straight. So give everybody a big hand for helping with the Hog Show.